Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're traveling back hundreds of thousands of years to uncover one of the greatest mysteries of human evolution. Why humans evolved only in Africa, and why no other continent could have created Homo sapiens. In this calm human evolution documentary for sleep, we will move slowly through shifting African climates, vast savannas under starlit skies, ancient predators in the tall grass, and the quiet cognitive revolution that shaped the human mind. We will follow fossils resting in deep sediment, DNA evidence whispering across continents, and the final piece of the puzzle that completes the Out of Africa story. This is not just a history lesson. It is a long, gentle history to fall asleep to about where we really come from. A soft exploration of our shared African heritage and the origin story of our species. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes. Imagine the Earth long before cities, long before borders, and let the distant winds of ancient Africa carry you back to the very beginning of us. In the quiet stretch of deep time, across billions of years of Earth's restless turning, life experimented endlessly with form and possibility. Forests rose and vanished, oceans shifted their borders, continents drifted like slow ships across a molten sea beneath them. Millions of species emerged, flourished briefly, and disappeared without ceremony. And yet, in all of that vast biological theater, only one lineage would one day look up at the stars and ask where it came from. Only one would whisper questions into the night. That lineage is ours, and here is the mystery that begins our calm human evolution documentary. Out of every continent, every climate, every ancient landscape, why did modern humans evolve only in Africa? Not in Europe with its sweeping plains, not in Asia with its immense river valleys, not in the Americas with their dramatic mountain chains, but in Africa, a continent so often misunderstood, simplified, or overlooked in older narratives. Tonight, in this gentle history for sleep about where we really come from, we move slowly. We are not here for dramatic revelations or sharp twists. We are here to rest inside a question large enough to quiet the mind. Because every person listening, whether in a city apartment or a quiet rural home, carries within their cells a memory older than language, a memory written in DNA, a signature that points back again and again to Africa. Long before borders, long before civilizations, long before the idea of nations, there was a small population of early Homo sapiens walking beneath African skies. They were not yet rulers of the planet. They were fragile, exposed, dependent on cooperation and awareness. Around them stretched landscapes both generous and unforgiving, savannas breathing in golden light, shifting forests, powerful rivers, seasons that could nourish or starve. Many other human species once shared the world: Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, earlier hominins scattered across different regions. But today, only Homo sapiens remains. We are the final surviving branch of a once bushy evolutionary tree. That alone invites a quiet sense of wonder. Out of so many variations, why this one? Why here? Why Africa? As we begin this slow bedtime story about our African origins, we hold that central question gently. Africa was not merely a backdrop, it was an active force. climate pulsed in long rhythms across millions of years, expanding grasslands, shrinking forests, reshaping habitats in cycles that demanded adaptation. Geography created corridors and barriers, isolating groups and then reconnecting them. Predators stalked the same plains where early humans searched for food. Competition was constant. Survival required not just strength, but flexibility. The human brain did not appear fully formed. It was sculpted, gradually, under pressures that were uniquely intense and uniquely varied. And so our story begins not with triumph, but with vulnerability, not with dominance, but with uncertainty. A small primate lineage learning, step by cautious step, how to think more abstractly, cooperate more deeply, and imagine beyond immediate danger. In the chapters ahead, we will explore climate, geography, ecosystems, and the subtle cognitive shifts that Africa's conditions encouraged. But for now, let the questions settle like evening light. Why nowhere else? Why did no other continent produce a species quite like us? By the end of this calm human evolution documentary, by the time the final piece of the puzzle is gently placed, you will understand why Africa was not just first, it was necessary. So, if we slow our breathing and widen the frame even further, the question becomes softer, but somehow more profound. For most of Earth's history, there were no humans at all. Dinosaurs ruled for over 160 million years without ever composing a poem or carving a symbol into stone. Mammals remained small and cautious in their shadows. Intelligence, at least the kind that builds telescopes and writes lullabies, was never guaranteed. Evolution does not move toward a goal. It does not promise consciousness. And yet, in Africa, over hundreds of thousands of years, a particular combination of pressures and possibilities converged. It was not a single moment of transformation. It was not a sudden spark in a cave. It was accumulation. Subtle changes in climate that altered rainfall patterns, shifts in vegetation that forced early humans to travel farther between food sources, long dry phases followed by wetter intervals that redrew the boundaries of lakes and grasslands. In this calm human evolution documentary, we consider how instability itself may have been the teacher. Africa during the late Pliocene and Pleistocene was dynamic, never entirely predictable. Forests retreated, then returned. Savannas expanded, then fragmented. Populations were separated by rivers or deserts, only to reconnect generations later. Isolation encouraged variation. Reconnection allowed ideas, tools, and genes to mix again. Over time, flexibility became more valuable than specialization. A mind capable of adjusting quickly to new environments held an advantage. Cooperation across slightly different groups became essential. Memory lengthened. Planning extended further into the future. This was not merely survival of the strongest, it was survival of the most adaptable. And here, gently, we approach a crucial insight for this slow bedtime story about our African origins. Africa was vast enough to contain diversity, yet interconnected enough to allow exchange. Other continents had early human populations later, yes, but they did not host the entire formative arc of our species. Europe, during many critical periods, was locked in ice. Large portions of Asia faced climactic extremes that narrowed habitable zones. Africa, by contrast, offered a mosaic of habitats within migratory reach. Coasts rich in marine life, highlands with cooler air,
river valleys dense with resources, and open grasslands demanding endurance and coordination. Each environment asked a different question of the developing human mind. How will you adapt now? How will you cooperate? How will you remember what worked last season when this season changes everything? As generations passed, tools grew more refined. Symbolic behavior appeared in subtle forms long before monumental architecture. Ochre markings, carefully shaped blades, shared hunting strategies. None of these emerged in isolation from the African landscape. They were responses to it. The pressures were neither purely harsh nor purely generous. They fluctuated. That fluctuation may have been the crucible. In a stable paradise, there is little incentive to innovate. In relentless catastrophe, there is no time to build complexity. But in a world that oscillates, that challenges without completely destroying, learning compounds. And so, when we ask why humans evolved only in Africa, we are not suggesting destiny. We're describing conditions. Conditions that were rare in combination. Conditions that sustained small populations long enough for cognition to expand, language to refine, and culture to layer upon itself. As you listen, perhaps feeling your thoughts slow and your body soften into rest, consider this quiet truth. The story of human evolution is not only about bones and fossils. It is about landscapes shaping minds. It is about uncertainty teaching imagination. It is about Africa as both cradle and classroom. By the end of this gentle history for sleep about where we really come from, the mystery will not feel smaller. It will feel deeper and somehow more intimate. Because the answer to why Africa is also the answer to why you are here at all.
As this first chapter draws gently toward its resting place, let us return once more to the central question and hold it with calm curiosity rather than urgency. Why Africa? Not as a slogan, not as a dramatic claim, but as a careful conclusion shaped by decades of archaeology, genetics, and paleoclimate research. When scientists map mitochondrial DNA across living populations, when they trace Y chromosome lineages backward through time, when they compare fossil skulls and stone tools layered carefully in African sediment, the signal converges. Again and again, the deepest roots point to Africa. Not because of myth, not because of pride, but because of evidence. In this calm human evolution documentary, we are not racing toward revelation. We are allowing understanding to unfold slowly, like dawn spreading across a savanna. The earliest anatomically modern human fossils discovered so far come from African sites. The greatest genetic diversity among living humans is found within African populations, which is precisely what we would expect from the oldest continuous lineage. Diversity accumulates over time. The longer a population exists in one region, the more variation it carries. When small groups eventually migrated outward into the rest of the world, they carried only a subset of that diversity with them. This is not speculation. It is pattern, and patterns repeated across disciplines form the quiet backbone of scientific confidence. Yet beyond the data lies something softer, almost philosophical. If all humans share African ancestry, then the idea of deep biological separation begins to dissolve. Differences in skin tone, hair texture, facial structure are recent adaptations layered upon a shared foundation. The timeline is humbling. For most of our species' existence, every human being on Earth lived in Africa. Only relatively recently, in evolutionary terms, did small bands venture outward into Eurasia,
Australia, and eventually the Americas. And so, as you listen to this gentle history for sleep about where we really come from, perhaps the mystery begins to shift shape. It is no longer only about geography, it is about unity. The African origin story is not a narrow regional tale, it is the shared prologue of humanity. Every language spoken tonight, every city illuminated after dark, every quiet room where someone drifts towards sleep traces back to that beginning. And here is the final invitation of this opening chapter. By the end of this slow bedtime story about our African origins, you will not simply know that humans evolved in Africa, you will understand why the combination of climate variability, geographic structure, ecological diversity, and long-term population continuity could not easily be replicated elsewhere. You will see why Europe's glaciations limited early continuity, why Asia's extreme climatic swings narrowed developmental corridors, why the Americas were populated only after migration had already occurred. Africa was not an accident of timing, it was a rare convergence, a continent large enough to sustain experimentation, stable enough to avoid total extinction, dynamic enough to reward intelligence. As the mind settles, let that convergence feel less like a headline and more like a landscape. Wide horizons, distant thunder, early humans watching the sky, reading patterns in wind and animal movement, learning that survival required anticipation. Over tens of thousands of years, those anticipatory skills refined into abstract thought, into story, into memory passed deliberately between generations, and eventually into the capacity to wonder about origins themselves. That is the quiet beauty of this greatest mystery of human evolution. The place that shaped us also gave us the ability to ask why it did. In the chapters ahead, we will step closer to the environmental pressures, the African crucible that molded cognition and cooperation. But for now, rest in this simple, grounding truth. Wherever you are, whatever language you speak, however different your surroundings may feel from a distant savanna, your story begins there. Not as myth, not as metaphor, but as shared inheritance. Imagine now that you are gently zooming out above the earth at night. The lights of cities fading, coastlines softening, continents becoming shapes rather than borders. And then, slowly, you begin to zoom back in, but this time not toward a country or a capital city. You focus instead on a vast, ancient landmass shaded in muted browns and deep greens. Africa, the African cradle of humanity, the place where the origin story of our species first unfolded. In this gentle sleep documentary about human evolution, we do not rush across this map. We linger. Africa is not simply large in size, it is large in time. Beneath its soils lie sediments layered like quiet pages of a book written over millions of years. Each layer holds fragments of bone, shaped stone, pollen grains, and chemical traces that together whisper a consistent message. We began here. The phrase cradle of humanity is often repeated, but tonight we let it breathe. A cradle is not merely a birthplace, it is a space of protection and growth, a place where something fragile is allowed to develop before it can stand alone. Africa, in deep prehistory, was such a cradle. Not always gentle, not always easy, but steady enough across vast spans of time to sustain early human populations while their bodies and minds slowly changed. When researchers speak of East Africa, of the Rift Valley, of regions that stretch across what are now Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania, They are not pointing to random dots on a map. They are tracing fault lines in Earth's crust that shaped landscapes of lakes, highlands, volcanic soils, and open grasslands. These shifting terrains created environmental variety within migratory reach. Early humans did not need to cross oceans to encounter difference. They could walk. A few days' journey might lead from woodland to open savanna, from cooler uplands to warmer plains. That variety mattered. It meant adaptation was constant, but not catastrophic. It meant populations could experiment, move, adjust. Many of the oldest fossils attributed to Homo sapiens, dating back more than 200,000 to 300,000 years, have been found in African contexts. This is not coincidence. It is pattern reinforced by geology, dating methods, and genetic evidence. When we examine sites like Jebel Irhoud in Morocco or Omo Kibish in Ethiopia, we are not just studying bones. We are observing moments in a long developmental arc that unfolded within African landscapes. And as you picture those landscapes, allow them to be vivid but unhurried. Imagine tall grasses bending in warm wind, acacia trees casting scattered shade, distant mountains softened by haze, lakes reflecting wide skies. In this gentle sleep documentary about human evolution, the facts arrive like footsteps rather than thunder. Most early hominin species known to science have African origins. Over millions of years, lineages emerged, diverged, and sometimes disappeared entirely within this continent. Homo habilis, Homo erectus, archaic forms that predate our own species. Africa was not only the birthplace of Homo sapiens, it was the long workshop in which the broader human lineage was shaped. That continuity is essential. Other continents would later host human populations, but Africa hosted the formative stages, the deep roots. And so when we speak of the African cradle of humanity, we are acknowledging not a single dramatic event, but a prolonged, patient unfolding. A landscape vast enough to hold uncertainty, a continent ancient enough to sustain change. As this chapter opens fully, we begin to sense that Africa was not just where we started, it was where evolution lingered long enough to refine us.
As we remain within the African cradle of humanity, let us move closer to the earth itself, to the ground where ancient footprints once pressed into soft volcanic ash and hardened under the patient sun. There is something profoundly calming about imagining time not as a ticking clock, but as sediment slowly settling at the bottom of a lake. In East Africa, across the Great Rift Valley, tectonic forces gently pulled the land apart over millions of years, forming basins that collected water and preserved history. Lakes expanded and receded. Volcanic eruptions laid down layers of ash that would later become precise time markers for scientists. These geological rhythms did more than shape scenery. They created conditions uniquely suited to preservation. That is one quiet reason why so many fossils older than 200,000 or even 300,000 years are found in Africa. The land itself became an archive. In this gentle 69 sleep documentary about human evolution, we allow that idea to unfold slowly. Imagine early humans walking along the shores of ancient lakes, unaware that their presence would one day be read in stone. Imagine bones settling into sediment during seasonal floods, protected from scavengers by layers of silt. Imagine tools dropped near riverbanks, later buried and held safely until careful hands would uncover them tens of thousands of generations later. Africa did not simply host early humans, it preserved them.
and preservation matters deeply in shaping our understanding of the origin story of our species. Yet preservation alone is not the entire explanation. Africa also hosted the longest continuous presence of hominin evolution. For millions of years before Homo sapiens appeared, earlier human ancestors walked these same landscapes. Australopithecines, with their partially upright gait, navigated woodland edges and open clearings. Later, members of the genus Homo began experimenting with stone tools, with cooperative hunting, with social bonds that extended beyond immediate kin. By the time anatomically modern humans emerged, Africa had already been a theater of human adaptation for an immense span of time. This continuity created what we might gently call an evolutionary momentum. Adaptations did not arise in isolation, they built upon previous adjustments. Each cognitive refinement layered upon earlier neurological shifts. Each cultural behavior rested on foundations laid long before. When we consider why the oldest Homo sapiens fossils appear here, we are observing the culmination of a deep regional history. Other continents would later welcome migrating populations, but they did not host this extended rehearsal. In Europe, early hominins faced repeated glacial advances that disrupted continuity. In parts of Asia, climatic extremes narrowed habitable corridors. Africa, by contrast, contained refuges during harsh periods, pockets of survivable environment where populations could contract without disappearing entirely. These refuges allowed lineages to persist long enough for gradual transformation. As you listen, perhaps the image becomes clearer. A mosaic continent, not uniformly lush, not uniformly arid, but patterned. Deserts to the north, tropical forests nearer the equator, vast savannas stretching across the east and south, highland plateaus cooled by altitude, river systems threading through shifting terrain. In such a mosaic, movement was possible without total migration. Experimentation could occur without complete collapse. And so, when researchers map fossil discoveries across Africa, the pattern is not random scatter. It reflects sustained habitation across diverse ecological zones. The African cradle of humanity was not a single valley or a single lakeshore. It was an interconnected network of landscapes that collectively nurtured human emergence. In this gentle history for sleep about where we really come from, we pause to appreciate how quietly powerful that network was. Evolution is often imagined as dramatic struggle, but here we see something subtler. A continent providing repeated opportunities for learning, adapting, and trying again. When one region dried, another retained water. When grasslands shifted, woodland edges offered alternative resources. Over long spans, this resilience became the stage upon which our species fully took shape. And as the night deepens, let this understanding feel less like data and more like terrain beneath your feet. The African crucible was not fire alone. It was variation, it was continuity, it was preservation. And within that layered stability and change, Homo sapiens slowly became possible. As this chapter settles into its final movement, we begin to sense that the African crucible was not a single furnace burning at one fixed temperature, but a long and patient shaping process. A crucible suggests heat and pressure, yet in Africa, the shaping forces were rarely constant. They shifted, softened, intensified, and returned again. This rhythm, more than any single dramatic event, may explain why the African cradle of humanity nurtured the full emergence of Homo sapiens. In this gentle 69 sleep documentary about human evolution, we allow that rhythm to move like slow breathing. Expansion and contraction, wet and dry, isolation and reunion. Across hundreds of thousands of years, Early human populations in Africa did not remain static. They separated when landscapes fractured into ecological islands. They reconnected when climate reopened corridors. Each separation allowed subtle differences to accumulate. Each reunion allowed exchange. Genetic variation flowed. Cultural ideas mixed. Tools evolved not in isolation, but through repeated sharing. The origin story of our species was not a straight line, it was braided. Imagine small communities living near a freshwater lake during a wetter phase, fishing, gathering plant foods, experimenting with stone shapes that made cutting easier. Then imagine the lake shrinking as rainfall patterns changed. Those same communities would need to move, perhaps following migrating herds across open grassland. New challenges would require new strategies. Cooperation would deepen. Communication would grow more precise. Over generations, such shifts reward foresight and memory. The mind becomes not only reactive, but anticipatory. Africa's size made this possible without forcing extinction. If one region became inhospitable, another remained viable within walking distance. This capacity for internal migration within a single continent, yet across diverse ecosystems, may have been one of the quiet advantages that no other landmass offered in quite the same way. Europe's ice sheets periodically erased large swaths of habitable terrain. Northern Asia experienced extremes that could isolate and bottleneck populations severely. Africa certainly had harsh periods, but its ecological mosaic provided buffers, and buffers allow continuity. Continuity allows complexity. Complexity allows cognition to expand. When paleoanthropologists describe the African crucible, they are not invoking mythic imagery. They are describing this long interplay between instability and refuge, between fragmentation and reconnection. In fossil sites scattered across East and North Africa, we see early Homo sapiens displaying both archaic and modern traits. Gradually, over time, features associated with our species become more consistent. Brain cases rounder, faces less projecting, toolkits more varied. But even these anatomical details are part of a broader narrative. What truly distinguishes Homo sapiens is not bone shape alone. It is the cumulative layering of culture, symbolic markings, ornaments, evidence of deliberate burial. These behaviors appear first and most clearly within African contexts before spreading outward. And so, as we conclude this chapter, the African cradle of humanity feels less like a claim and more like a convergence of factors. Preservation in rift valleys and sedimentary basins, long continuity of hominin presence, environmental diversity within migratory reach, climatic oscillations that rewarded flexibility without erasing populations entirely. Together, these conditions formed a crucible not of constant flame, but of recurring challenge. In this gentle history for sleep about where we really come from, we rest in that image. A vast continent breathing through epochs, early humans watching the horizon, adjusting to subtle changes in wind and vegetation, learning that survival depended not on strength alone, but on shared knowledge and adaptable minds. The African crucible did not simply produce a species capable of walking upright, it fostered a species capable of imagining, remembering, and eventually asking about its own beginnings. As we move softly toward the next chapter, where climate itself becomes the central character, let this understanding settle deeply. Africa was not merely the first stop in a global journey, it was the long workshop in which the journey became possible at all. To shape a species, nature does not simply provide comfort, it provides pressure. Not the sudden pressure of catastrophe alone, but the steady, recurring pressure of change. Imagine an invisible mold surrounding a continent, tightening and loosening across millennia. In Africa, that mold was climate. In this calm exploration of African climate and human evolution, we begin with something deceptively simple. Rain does not fall the same way forever. Winds do not blow from the same direction across deep time. The tilt of Earth's axis shifts subtly. Orbital cycles alter how sunlight distributes across hemispheres. These slow astronomical rhythms ripple downward into regional weather patterns. In Africa, those ripples became pulses. Periods of intense rainfall expanded lakes and rivers across East Africa. Grasslands softened into wetlands. Forest edges crept outward. Then, gradually, the pattern reversed. Rain diminished, lakes shrank, wetlands dried, open grasslands widened. In some regions, green corridors transformed into dust-laden plains. And then, centuries or millennia later, water would return again. This oscillation was not a single episode, it repeated. When climate changes, behavior must change. And when behavior must change, cognition is tested. When climate changes, behavior must change, and the brain begins, slowly, to change as well. Repeat that over tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years, and a subtle but powerful shaping begins. Early Homo sapiens did not evolve in a static paradise. They evolved within variability. Imagine a community living near a freshwater lake during a humid phase. Fishing is abundant. Plant foods are predictable. Movement is limited because resources cluster near water. Children grow familiar with seasonal rhythms that feel reliable. Then the rains weaken. The lake recedes. Fish populations shrink. The shoreline extends farther and farther from camp. Suddenly, staying in place is no longer viable. Movement becomes necessary. Tracking herds becomes central. Knowledge must extend beyond immediate surroundings. Memory becomes precious. Where did the herds migrate last dry season? Which valley retains water longest? When climate changes, behavior must change. And when behavior must change, the brain begins, slowly, to change as well. In this gentle 69 sleep documentary about human evolution, we do not dramatize drought or flood. We let them arrive like slow tides. Forest thinning into savanna, savanna thickening into woodland, a landscape that never settles permanently. This instability, paradoxically, may have been stabilizing for cognition because it required anticipation, it required imagination, it required cooperative planning. African climates and human evolution are inseparable. The continent's vast size meant that not all regions shifted identically at the same moment. While one basin dried, another retained moisture. While northern zones experienced aridity, equatorial forests persisted. This patchwork created corridors of opportunity. Early humans could relocate without abandoning the continent. They could adapt without facing total extinction. And so climate did not simply threaten them, it trained them. It trained attention, it trained flexibility, it trained social coordination. Over repeated cycles, learning accumulated. The human mind became less reactive and more predictive, not merely responding to present danger, but preparing for the next shift in rainfall, the next migration of grazing animals, the next subtle change in plant growth. And so we begin to see climate not as background noise, but as an active architect, an invisible pressure cooker that did not explode, but simmered, slowly, persistently, across epochs.
As the night deepens and our pace remains unhurried, we return to that quiet refrain. When climate changes, behavior must change.
And when behavior must change, the brain slowly changes as well. This is not a metaphor. It is a biological truth unfolding across generations. In this calm exploration of African climate and human evolution, we begin to see how repeated environmental instability may have selected not for brute strength alone, but for flexibility, memory, and foresight. Imagine once more the alternating rhythms of wet and dry periods across eastern and southern Africa. During humid phases, lakes expanded across the Rift Valley, creating corridors rich in fish, waterfowl, and plant life. During arid phases, those same lakes contracted or disappeared, leaving behind mineral flats and open plains. The landscape was never permanently generous, never permanently hostile. It shifted. And within that shifting world, early Homo sapiens were forced into a cognitive dance with uncertainty. When the rains returned, certain behaviors were rewarded. Fishing techniques could be refined. Camps could remain near water longer. Social groups might cluster, sharing knowledge and strengthening bonds. But when the rains failed, clustering became dangerous. Resources scattered. Herds migrated unpredictably. Groups had to spread out, explore new territories, and remember distant watering holes. When climate changes, behavior must change. And when behavior must change, neural pathways adapt through use and reinforcement. Over thousands of seasons, the individuals best able to anticipate environmental fluctuation would have had subtle advantages. Not because they were the strongest hunters in a single season, but because they remembered patterns across many seasons. They recalled which valleys retained moisture longest. They anticipated animal movements before they occurred. They adjusted migration timing based on subtle shifts in wind or plant growth. In this gentle 69 sleep documentary about human evolution, we do not imagine dramatic leaps in intelligence. Instead, we imagine incremental calibration, a brain that becomes slightly better at modeling the future, slightly more capable of holding multiple possibilities in mind, slightly more inclined toward cooperation because shared information reduces risk. African climate and human evolution intertwine at this level of repetition. Dry, wet, forest, grassland, forest, grassland. When climate changes, behavior must change. And when behavior must change, social structures adapt as well. Groups that communicated effectively could coordinate movement. Groups that shared food strategically could survive leaner times. Over tens of thousands of years, language-like systems may have become increasingly precise because precision reduced misunderstanding in unpredictable conditions. Consider also the emotional dimension. Living in a landscape that does not remain stable requires tolerance for uncertainty. It requires patience. It requires the ability to endure temporary scarcity without panic that fractures the group. These traits, subtle as they are, may have been quietly favored. A mind that can imagine a future beyond the present drought is less likely to collapse into despair. A community that trusts shared memory is more likely to endure. When climate changes, behavior must change. And when behavior must change, social structures adapt as well. Rituals may have emerged not only from spiritual impulse, but from social cohesion. Storytelling around firelight may have carried not only entertainment, but encoded environmental knowledge. In this slow bedtime story about our African origins, climate becomes more than background. It becomes teacher. The invisible pressure cooker did not explode in sudden catastrophe. It simmered. It required adjustment after adjustment. It did not allow complacency to calcify. And through that long simmering, the architecture of the human mind expanded its capacity for abstraction, cooperation, and planning. We begin to sense that intelligence was not an accident of mutation alone. It was rehearsed season after season under African skies that could never be fully trusted to remain the same.
As we settle into the final movement of this chapter, let us hold the refrain once more, gently, almost like a lullaby carried on warm air. When climate changes, behavior must change, and when behavior must change, the brain slowly changes too. This repetition is not accidental. It mirrors the cycles that shaped early Homo sapiens. In this calm reflection on African climate and human evolution, we now step back and observe the pattern across deeper time. Paleoclimate records drawn from lake sediments, ocean cores, and fossil pollen reveal a continent repeatedly oscillating between abundance and scarcity. Wet corridors opening across what are now arid zones, grasslands spreading where forest once stood. Then the reversal. Water retreating, vegetation thinning, dust rising in winds that carried fine particles across great distances. Each cycle lasted thousands of years, long enough to shape generations, short enough to demand adjustment. Imagine what that means for a species still refining its cognitive capacities. If the environment remained unchanged for hundreds of thousands of years, there would be little incentive to innovate beyond immediate needs. If catastrophe erased populations entirely, evolution would stall. But in Africa, the shifts were calibrated, severe but not universally annihilating, challenging but rarely terminal across the entire continent. This calibrated instability may have been the true environmental pressure cooker, not a single explosive crisis, but a sustained requirement for recalibration. When climate changes, behavior must change, and when behavior must change, planning horizons extend. During wetter periods, mobility patterns might narrow. During drier periods, mobility expands. Social networks stretch across wider distances. Knowledge exchange becomes vital. Those who remember distant resources survive. Those who anticipate future scarcity prepare. Over tens of thousands of years, these small advantages compound. Neural circuits that support spatial memory, pattern recognition, and social inference are repeatedly activated. Repetition strengthens pathways. In this gentle 6-9 sleep documentary about human evolution, we imagine this strengthening not as a dramatic surge, but as steady refinement. The African climate did not shout instructions, it whispered adjustments. It nudged populations to diversify strategies. It favored minds capable of holding contingency. If rains fail, what then? If herds migrate earlier than expected, what then? If a river dries, where next? Such questions asked implicitly across generations cultivate foresight. And foresight is a cornerstone of intelligence. The phrase, "how changing environments shaped early Homo sapiens," is not rhetorical flourish, it is descriptive. Climate variability selected for cognitive elasticity. It selected for cooperation because no individual could track every variable alone. It selected for communication because shared memory reduces risk. It selected for curiosity because exploration reveals alternative options when familiar resources vanish. When climate changes, behavior must change, and when behavior must change, culture deepens. Stories about previous droughts become cautionary guides. Ritual gatherings reinforce alliances that matter when resources tighten. Tool-making traditions adapt to new prey or plant materials. Over time, these layered responses create a feedback loop.
Environment pressures mind. Mind reshapes behavior. Behavior alters survival outcomes. Survival outcomes reinforce certain cognitive traits. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the architecture of Homo sapiens differentiates itself from earlier hominins, not solely in skull shape, but in flexibility, in symbolic capacity, in the ability to imagine futures not yet visible on the horizon. As we close this chapter, let the image become serene, a continent breathing across millennia, rains advancing and retreating like tides, early humans watching cloud formations with quiet attentiveness, listening for subtle changes in wind, teaching children where water once flowed and may flow again. The African climate was not merely backdrop to our origin story, it was instructor. It was the invisible mold, the environmental pressure cooker that simmered intelligence into being. And as we move gently toward the next chapter, where geography and isolation add new dimensions to this shaping process, we carry with us a simple understanding. Africa's changing skies did not just surround early humans, they sculpted the very way those humans learned to think.
Now, imagine Africa not only as a continent shaped by climate, but as a vast natural laboratory. A landscape so varied that it quietly separated human groups, allowed them to drift apart, to experiment with different ways of living, and then, after years, sometimes after generations, brought them back together again. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, we slow the image down. Picture the Rift Valley stretching like a long scar across eastern Africa. Picture mountain ranges rising gently, deserts expanding in the north, dense forests breathing near the equator, wide savannas shimmering under heat. These are not just scenic backdrops, they're subtle barriers. Geography, isolation, and human history are intertwined here. A valley can separate communities. A mountain ridge can redirect migration. A growing desert can stretch distance between groups that once shared hunting grounds. When rainfall patterns shift and grasslands fragment, populations do not vanish all at once. They withdraw into pockets. One group settles near a river that still flows. Another moves toward higher ground. Another lingers near a shrinking lake. They are not fully cut off, but they are separated enough for differences to grow. Separate, adapt, adjust. Separate, adapt, adjust. Over time, each group becomes a small experiment. In one region, hunting strategies may favor large grazing animals across open plains. In another, woodland edges encourage smaller game and more plant gathering. In rocky uplands, stone types differ, and so tools take slightly different shapes. No group knows it is participating in the natural laboratory of Africa. They are simply surviving. Yet survival in slightly different conditions nudges behavior in slightly different directions. Isolation does not need to be absolute to matter. Even modest reduction in contact allows variation to accumulate. Social customs shift, communication patterns refine, tool-making techniques evolve in parallel but not identically. And then, slowly, conditions shift again. Rain returns to a previously dry corridor. Grass spreads across what was once sand. Paths reopen. Separate groups encounter each other once more. Meet again. Exchange. Blend. Meet again. Exchange. Blend. Ideas that proved successful in one region spread into another. A hunting technique from open savanna merges with plant processing knowledge from forest margins. Tool designs combine. Genetic lineages mix. The laboratory does not discard its experiments. It integrates them.
In this gentle narrative of geography, isolation, and human history, we avoid charts and measurements. Instead, we rest in simple images: a river swelling in the rainy season, a dry wind carrying dust across plains, small bands of early Homo sapiens walking along animal trails, unaware that the continent beneath their feet is shaping their destiny through separation and reunion. Separate, evolve quietly, reunite, recombine. Across tens of thousands of years, this pattern repeats. Africa's geography does not lock populations into permanent isolation as islands in an ocean might. Instead, it offers partial separation, enough to encourage diversity, yet not so severe as to prevent eventual mixing. And in that balance between division and reunion, the architecture of Homo sapiens grows richer.
Let us stay inside this image a little longer, inside the natural laboratory of Africa, where geography quietly arranges human experience without announcing itself. Separate, evolve quietly, reunite, recombine. The rhythm continues, soft and almost hypnotic. A river floods its banks and becomes difficult to cross, dividing two communities who once shared seasonal gatherings. Months turn to years. Children grow up knowing only the stories of those on the other side. Tool traditions begin to drift. One group sharpens points to hunt swift antelope across open plains. Another shapes broader edges, suited for processing roots and tubers near woodland margins. Separate, adapt, refine. Separate, adapt, refine. The isolation is rarely absolute. There are distant sightings across valleys, faint trails through mountain passes, rumors carried by travelers who dare to move between territories. But the contact is reduced enough for difference to deepen. And then, slowly, the environment shifts again. A drought loosens its grip. A grassland corridor opens between once distant basins. A pass through the mountains becomes easier to cross. Reunite, exchange, blend. Reunite, exchange, blend. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, we do not imagine grand migrations sweeping across continents. Instead, we imagine small-scale reconnections, groups meeting at water sources, sharing meat, stories and techniques, watching each other's gestures when shaping stone, learning subtly, imitating quietly. The geography, isolation, and human history of Africa unfold not in dramatic explosions, but in recurring pulses. A desert expands, then contracts. A lake fills, then evaporates. A forest thickens, then thins. Each shift rearranges proximity. Each rearrangement alters who interacts with whom. In this way, the continent becomes an ever-adjusting network of semi-isolated populations. And semi-isolation is powerful. Total isolation may preserve difference, but it limits exchange. Total openness may dissolve difference before it matures. Africa's geography often produced something in between. Enough separation for innovation, enough reconnection for integration. Imagine one region developing a more efficient way to coordinate group hunts in open terrain. Signals become more precise, roles more defined. Meanwhile, another region refines plant processing techniques, discovering methods to detoxify certain foods or store them longer. When these groups reunite, knowledge does not compete, it combines. The hunting coordination spreads,
The plant processing innovation spreads. Separate experiments become collective advantage. Over tens of thousands of years, this pattern compounds. Variation accumulates in pockets. Successful adaptations circulate when corridors reopen. Genetic diversity remains high because populations repeatedly merge rather than remain permanently divided. The natural laboratory of Africa does not produce a single uniform lineage evolving in isolation. It produces braided lineages, streams diverging around obstacles, then converging again downstream. This braided structure may help explain why the African fossil record shows overlapping traits, why early Homo sapiens appear with a mosaic of archaic and modern features. They were not emerging from one static group in one static place. They were shaped by cycles of separation and reunion. Separate, experiment, reunite, integrate. The mind, too, is influenced by this pattern. Encountering unfamiliar groups requires negotiation. Exchange requires trust. Blending traditions requires flexibility. Over generations, such repeated social recombination may have favored individuals capable of navigating complexity, not just environmental complexity, but interpersonal complexity. And so geography does more than shape bodies or tools, it shapes social cognition. As you drift deeper into this slow bedtime story about our African origins, allow the image to soften. Valleys opening under pale light, small groups crossing paths near a shared water source, brief tension dissolving into exchange, stone tools examined with curiosity, stories shared in low voices beside fading embers. The laboratory is vast, but its experiments are intimate.
As we move into the final movement of this chapter, the rhythm becomes almost meditative. Separate, evolve quietly, reunite, recombine. The natural laboratory of Africa does not operate with glass walls and instruments. Its tools are valleys, escarpments, river systems, mountain chains, and deserts that expand and contract like breathing lungs. Geography, isolation, and human history are not abstract concepts here. They are lived realities repeated across tens of thousands of years. Imagine a group of early Homo sapiens living near a fertile basin fed by seasonal rains. For several generations, the basin sustains them. Children are born, stories are told, techniques are refined. Over time, their way of shaping stone becomes distinct. Their social rituals develop subtle nuances. Their patterns of cooperation stabilize around the needs of that terrain. Then climate shifts, or water sources alter course, and a natural barrier strengthens. A widening stretch of arid land lies between them and neighboring groups. Contact decreases. Separate, refine, adapt. In another region, perhaps along a forest edge near a winding river, a different group refines plant processing, learns which seeds require soaking, which roots demand slow roasting. Their communication patterns reflect woodland acoustics rather than open plains. Their hunting rhythms adjust to smaller, quicker prey. They too are separate, refining, adapting. And then, inevitably, the geography changes again. A grassland corridor opens. A once impassable stretch becomes navigable. The two groups encounter one another after years of distance. There is caution, curiosity, negotiation. Reunite, exchange, blend. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, we imagine that exchange not as conquest, but as conversation. techniques observed and imitated, genes mingling across generations, rituals adapting to incorporate shared understanding. The laboratory does not end experiments when groups meet again, it combines them. This repeated recombination has profound implications. Permanent isolation can lead to divergence so extreme that reunion becomes impossible. But Africa's geography often favored partial separation rather than permanent division. That partial separation allowed innovation without severing the thread of shared ancestry. Separate, evolve quietly, reunite, recombine. Not once, but countless times. This quiet choreography of geography may have been as important as climate in shaping who we became. And as we prepare to step into the next chapter, where predators and prey will add new dimensions to the story, we carry forward this understanding. Africa was not simply where humans began. It was the natural laboratory where separation and reunion repeatedly refined the human experiment, until the final piece of the puzzle slowly came into view.
Night settles gently over the African grasslands. The air cools. Stars appear one by one above the wide horizon. Somewhere in the darkness, golden eyes reflect faint firelight. The low, distant call of a lion drifts across the savanna. The soft, cautious movement of hyenas circles at the edge of hearing. And in the middle of this immense living system, a small group of early humans sits close together beside a modest fire, listening. In this calm exploration of African predators and early humans, we slow our breathing and imagine that scene, not with fear, but with quiet awareness. The African ecosystem is layered, intricate, and ancient. At the top of its visible hierarchy move the large predators, lions, leopards, hyenas, sometimes packs of wild dogs, each perfectly adapted for strength, speed, and coordination. Beneath them graze vast herds of antelope, zebra, and buffalo. Birds move between the grasses, insects hum in the cooling air, and among them, physically unimpressive by comparison, stand our ancestors. No claws, no fangs, no heavy fur, no explosive sprint across long distances. Compared to the great predators of the continent, early Homo sapiens appear fragile. Yet fragility in this environment becomes the beginning of something else. In this 69 sleepy history for adults, we consider a simple truth. Because our ancestors were not the strongest, they were compelled to become something different. African predators and early humans shared the same landscape. The threat was constant, but it was not theatrical. It was part of the nightly rhythm. A rustle in tall grass meant attention must sharpen. A sudden silence among insects meant something larger might be moving nearby. When danger lingers, cooperation deepens. A solitary individual is vulnerable. A coordinated group is resilient. Around the fire, voices would have remained low, yet communication would have been essential. Gestures refined, signals standardized. A glance in one direction might carry meaning. A subtle sound might indicate alertness without panic. In such a setting, memory becomes survival. Who keeps watch at which hour? Where predators were last seen? Which waterholes are safer at dawn? The African ecosystem shaped our ancestors, not through constant conflict, but through persistent pressure.
Large predator density in parts of Africa was among the highest in the world during much of human evolution. This does not mean endless attack, it means unceasing awareness. And awareness, repeated night after night, season after season, strengthens cognitive pathways. The mind must simulate possibilities. If lions are near the river, perhaps camp should shift. If hyenas shadow the herd, perhaps hunting strategies must adjust. This continual mental rehearsal, anticipating risk without direct confrontation, may have subtly expanded neural capacity. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, we allow the image to remain gentle. The firelight flickers against faces. Children lean into elders. Stories are told softly, not merely to entertain, but to encode lessons. Remember the valley where the grass grew tall and the lions hid. Remember the dry season when the water shrank and the herds clustered tightly. These stories are survival maps disguised as narrative. The African ecosystem, with its layered food chains and visible hierarchies, quietly nudged human cognition toward abstraction. We had to imagine what was not immediately visible. We had to cooperate beyond instinct. We had to survive, not because we were strongest, but because we learned together. Under starlit skies, surrounded by predators who embodied physical dominance, early humans cultivated a different strength: shared attention, shared memory, shared intention. And in that difference, the human story deepened.
The fire burns lower now, its glow steady and warm against the cool breath of the African night. Beyond the ring of light, the ecosystem continues its quiet negotiation of survival. Hooves shift softly in the distance. A predator's silhouette moves along the horizon. The human group remains small, physically unremarkable in comparison to the muscular grace of lions or the silent precision of leopards. And yet, within that circle of firelight, something unusual is taking shape. In this calm reflection on African predators and early humans, we consider how weakness can become the catalyst for intelligence. Early Homo sapiens were not apex predators in strength. They were generalists, flexible, observant, reliant on shared awareness. In an ecosystem dense with large carnivores, this flexibility was not optional, it was essential. The African ecosystem shaped our ancestors through persistent exposure to threat without constant collapse. Danger existed, but extinction did not immediately follow. That delicate balance created space for learning. When a predator circled, the group did not scatter blindly. They listened. They watched one another's reactions. Over time, patterns formed. Certain vocalizations might signal urgency. Others might indicate caution without alarm. A raised arm might mean silence. A shift in posture might mean prepare to move. Language in its earliest forms may have grown not from abstract curiosity alone, but from necessity under pressure. The phrase African predators and early humans carries within it a story of adaptation rather than domination. Compared to regions with fewer large predators, parts of Africa presented an unusually complex web of threats. Lions in open savanna, leopards in trees, hyenas that tracked scent across distance. Even large herbivores could be dangerous if approached carelessly. To survive in such an environment required not only courage, but coordination. A lone human could be overtaken. A coordinated group could strategize. Planning a hunt in predator territory meant calculating risk. Approaching water at dusk required vigilance. Choosing where to sleep required collective agreement. In this 69 sleepy history for adults, we imagine these decisions unfolding quietly.
No dramatic music, no sudden chaos, just attentive minds weighing possibilities. If predators roam near the river, perhaps camp moves to slightly higher ground. If prey herds migrate earlier in the season, perhaps tools must adjust. Each small decision strengthens neural pathways related to anticipation and memory. The African ecosystem, therefore, becomes a training ground for predictive thinking. When survival depends on reading subtle cues, wind direction, animal calls, shifts in herd behavior, the brain is repeatedly exercised. Over generations, individuals who could detect patterns quickly and communicate them effectively would have improved group survival. Cooperation becomes more than social preference, it becomes evolutionary advantage. Shared vigilance reduces individual risk. Shared planning increases success. Around the fire, stories of previous encounters likely carried coded lessons. Not graphic tales, but instructive reminders. When the grass is high, move slowly. When the sky grows still, listen carefully. These refrains, repeated gently, reinforce communal memory. The ecosystem does not simply test strength, it tests awareness. And awareness, refined over millennia, may have expanded cognitive capacity in subtle but profound ways. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, we let the image linger. A small human figure standing upright against the vast savanna, eyes scanning the horizon, mind projecting possible futures. The predators remain powerful, the humans remain physically modest, but something has shifted. Intelligence, cooperation, and communication begin to compensate for physical vulnerability. The African ecosystem did not eliminate weakness, it transformed it into a reason to think together.
The embers glow softly now, red against the velvet dark. The calls of the night continue at a distance, neither closer nor farther, simply present. In this final movement of our reflection on African predators and early humans, we allow the scene to widen beyond the small circle of firelight and into the vast ecology that shaped the mind itself. The African ecosystem was not merely a backdrop of danger, it was a continuous instructor, asking questions in the form of subtle threats. How close is that shadow? How long until dawn? Where will the herds move when the grass thins? These questions were not spoken aloud every time, yet they lived inside the nervous system. Over thousands upon thousands of nights, awareness became habit. Habit became culture. Culture became cognition. In this 69 sleepy history for adults, we recognize that the pressure from predators did not produce a species of constant panic. It produced a species of anticipation. Anticipation is quieter than fear. It requires modeling possible futures. It requires imagining outcomes before they unfold. In a landscape where lions might stalk riverbanks and hyenas trail silently at a distance, early humans had to hold multiple possibilities in mind at once. If we camped here, what might approach? If we moved there, what might we avoid? This mental flexibility, holding uncertainty without paralysis, may have been one of the most significant gifts of the African ecosystem. Compared to other continents where large predator density was lower during certain evolutionary windows, parts of Africa maintained persistent ecological complexity. African predators and early humans shared overlapping territories for immense spans of time. That coexistence did not necessarily mean constant confrontation, but it meant continuous calibration. When predators thrive, prey species adapt. When prey species adapt, predators adjust. And humans, positioned uniquely within that chain, adapted not through claws or fangs, but through collaboration. The fire becomes symbolic here, not as weapon, but as coordination point. It draws the group together. It extends light slightly beyond the body. It creates a shared boundary against the dark.
Around it, communication deepens. Around it, strategy forms. Over time, such gatherings may have refined vocal range, facial expression, and emotional nuance. To coordinate defense, individuals must trust signals. To trust signals, they must read intention. Reading intention fosters empathy. Empathy strengthens bonds. Bonds enhance survival. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, the predator-prey dynamic becomes less about physical struggle and more about cognitive growth. The ecosystem demands alertness without hysteria. It rewards those who can remain attentive yet composed. It favors those who remember where danger once lingered and who can transmit that memory clearly. Over generations, these subtle advantages accumulate. Neural networks supporting attention, memory, and social reasoning are reinforced again and again. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, a species emerges that can imagine dangers that are not yet visible, can plan for seasons not yet arrived, can cooperate beyond immediate kin. As the chapter draws to its quiet close, imagine the stars above that African night, clear, expansive, patient. The predators still roam, the prey still graze, the humans still sit together, small in stature but growing in something unseen. Their bodies remain modest, their minds expand. The African ecosystem did not make humans powerful through dominance, it made them powerful through awareness. And awareness, layered over millennia, becomes intelligence. As we gently prepare to enter the next chapter, where the cognitive revolution will unfold more clearly, we carry with us this understanding. Beneath the golden eyes of lions and the watchful silence of the savanna, the human mind was learning how to survive not by strength alone, but by thinking together beneath the African sky.
After hundreds of thousands of years beneath shifting African skies, something changed, quietly, and it left no obvious mark on stone. It did not roar like a predator. It did not rise like a mountain. It did not carve valleys or dry rivers. It unfolded inside the skull. It unfolded in the way our ancestors began to think. In this calm reflection on the cognitive revolution in Africa, we lower our voices even further. The tools remain simple for a long time. The bones look familiar. The campsites resemble those of earlier generations. And yet, beneath these outward similarities, a subtle transformation gathers momentum. They did not only react to the present, they began to anticipate the future. They did not only communicate immediate danger, they began to share imagined possibilities. They did not only survive the night, they began to plan the morning. The phrase cognitive revolution in Africa does not describe a single dramatic moment. It describes a gradual expansion of mental horizons shaped by climate, geography, and the persistent presence of predators. Over countless seasons of separation and reunion, over cycles of drought and renewal, over nights of shared vigilance beneath the stars, neural pathways were exercised again and again. Cooperation deepened, memory strengthened, imagination stretched slightly further with each generation. In this 69 boring history to sleep to, we picture a small group seated by the fading embers of a fire. Tomorrow's hunt is not yet visible, but it is already present in their minds. One person gestures toward the east, where the herd was last seen. Another traces a path in the dust, indicating where to circle quietly at dawn.
A third suggests who should move first and who should remain near cover. They are not only reacting, they are simulating. They are rehearsing an event that has not yet occurred. This is the quiet revolution. They did not only experience the world, they begin to model it. Language, in its more complex form, may have grown from this need to share mental images. A warning cry is simple. A plan requires structure. If the herd turns toward the river, we move this way. If the wind shifts, we wait. Conditional thinking, if, then, perhaps, marks a cognitive threshold. And all of this is unfolding in Africa, not because the continent possessed magic, but because it layered pressures in a way that required flexibility. Climate demanded prediction. Geography encouraged variation and recombination. Predators enforced cooperation. Together, these forces created a mental training ground. They did not only remember the past, they began to imagine futures that did not yet exist. They did not only follow instinct, they began to override it when strategy required patience. They did not only act alone, they began to coordinate in larger numbers, aligning intention across many individuals. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, we imagine the revolution not as fireworks, but as widening circles of awareness. A child listens as elders recount a previous hunt. The child internalizes not just the outcome, but the reasoning. Over time, reasoning itself becomes transmissible. Thought becomes cultural inheritance. And the most extraordinary detail remains simple. All of this is happening in Africa.
The night deepens again, and the firelight flickers against thoughtful faces. The revolution we are tracing leaves no sudden monument, no carved inscription announcing its arrival. It is quieter than that. It lives in pauses between words, in the ability to hold an image of tomorrow before it exists. In this continued reflection on the cognitive revolution in Africa, we move gently from planning to symbolism. They did not only coordinate movement, they began to attach meaning. They did not only track herds, they began to remember stories about them. They did not only respond to patterns, they began to imagine patterns beyond immediate perception. This shift may have unfolded slowly, shaped by the same layered pressures we have followed across climate, geography, and the African ecosystem. When a group separated by mountains met again generations later, they did not only exchange tools, they exchanged narratives. A gesture might represent a shared myth. A mark in the dust might stand for something unseen. Over time, symbols emerge not as decoration, but as compression of complex thought. A simple sound comes to represent a place, a person, a future intention. And all of this is unfolding in Africa. In this 69 boring history to sleep to, we imagine an early evening scene. The hunt tomorrow is discussed again. Roles are divided. One individual will circle wide at dawn. Another will wait near the narrow passage where animals tend to funnel. But something else is present. Someone mimics the movement of the herd with exaggerated gestures, provoking soft laughter. The imitation is playful, yet it encodes knowledge. It transforms observation into shared representation. They do not only see the herd, they represent it. Representation is powerful.
It allows the mind to manipulate reality without physically engaging it. This ability may have been reinforced by the repeated environmental fluctuations of Africa. When climate changed, behavior had to change. When behavior changed, memory had to expand. When memory expanded, imagination found more space. The cognitive revolution in Africa was therefore not isolated from earlier pressures. It was cumulative. Climate required foresight. Geography required flexibility. Predators required cooperation. Together, they created fertile ground for abstraction. Abstraction allows humans to conceive of entities not physically present: future hunts, distant groups, shared identities. They did not only survive as individuals, they began to think as members of a collective we. This collective identity may have strengthened bonds beyond immediate kinship. In an environment where survival depended on coordinated defense and shared resources, expanding the circle of trust became advantageous. Around the fire, conversation becomes layered. There is the practical layer, where to move, how to hunt. There is the social layer, who leads, who supports. And then there is the symbolic layer, stories that bind, explanations that unify, meanings that transcend immediate action. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, we allow these layers to overlap softly. A child asks why the herd moves north when the wind shifts. An elder responds not only with practical observation, but with a story that encodes environmental knowledge. The story may include metaphor. It may attribute intention to animals or sky. Whether literal or figurative, it organizes experience. The mind learns not only to react, but to narrate. And narrative structures thought. They did not only perceive danger, they began to conceptualize it. They did not only act in the present, they began to situate themselves in a timeline, remembering the past, anticipating the future. And again, the quiet refrain returns. All of this is happening in Africa. The continent that layered climate variability, geographical recombination, and ecological pressure becomes the forge of mind. The revolution is not loud, it is steady, it is incremental. But once underway, it transforms a species from reactive survivor into reflective planner.
The embers fade into a steady glow, and the night feels vast but no longer overwhelming. We have followed climate, geography, and predators across long African millennia, and now we rest with the quiet culmination of those forces inside the human mind. After hundreds of thousands of years, something subtle yet irreversible has taken root. They do not only respond, they do not only remember, they begin to imagine together. In this final reflection on the cognitive revolution in Africa, we step gently into the moment when thought becomes shared architecture. They did not only plan the next hunt, they began to construct mental maps of territories far beyond immediate sight. They did not only recall which valley held water, they began to conceive of landscapes as structured spaces with meaning. They did not only follow elders' instructions, they began to understand the reasoning behind them. This layering of abstraction may have unfolded gradually, but its consequences were profound. The African pressures we have traced, volatile climate, fragmented geography, dense predator ecosystems, did not simply demand physical resilience, they demanded flexible cognition. They demanded that individuals integrate memory, imagination, cooperation, and prediction into a coherent whole. And all of this was happening in Africa.
In this 69 boring history to sleep, we imagine an early morning before sunrise. The group prepares for the hunt, but the preparation is no longer purely reactive. Roles are assigned not only by habit, but by strategic consideration. One individual is chosen because of speed, another because of patience, another because of keen observation. The group does not only move together, it aligns intention. They anticipate not just where prey might run, but how fellow hunters will respond. This anticipatory layering reflects a mind capable of modeling other minds. Theory of mind, the ability to imagine what another individual knows or intends, may have been strengthened under African conditions of cooperation and danger. To survive, they had to trust signals. To trust signals, they had to infer intention. To infer intention, they had to project beyond their own perspective. They did not only exist as solitary consciousness, they began to participate in shared consciousness. Language deepened, symbols multiplied, stories lengthened. They did not only recount events, they began to embed moral lessons, group identity, and imagined futures within narrative. Around the fire, a tale about a clever maneuver might reinforce patience. A story about a careless mistake might caution restraint. Cultural memory became scaffolding for future behavior. And as these cognitive capacities stabilized, something extraordinary occurred. Humans could now envision not only tomorrow's hunt, but journeys beyond familiar territory. They could imagine migrating across landscapes previously unseen. They could plan movements that extended beyond a single season. The mind, forged in Africa's layered pressures, was no longer confined to immediate survival. It was expansive. It was portable. And as we approach the threshold of the next chapter, where we will explore the final piece of the puzzle, why nowhere else could replicate this combination, we pause with a simple truth. The cognitive revolution did not erupt in isolation. It simmered under African skies. It accumulated through cycles of separation and reunion. It was sharpened by predator vigilance and softened by communal firelight. It was nurtured by variability rather than stability. And so, beneath the constellations that have watched over the continent for millions of years, a species emerged capable of imagination, cooperation, and symbolic thought. They did not only survive Africa, they were shaped by it. They did not only adapt to its pressures, they internalized them. And all of this, quietly, steadily, was happening in Africa. In the past century, the final pieces began to surface, not with thunder, not with spectacle, but with quiet patience. Each fossil uncovered from ancient soil, each strand of DNA carefully analyzed, seemed to whisper the same message: return to Africa. In this calm reflection on recent discoveries about the out of Africa theory, we shift from deep time to more recent human curiosity. For thousands of years, people wondered where we truly began. Myths rose and fell. Speculations traveled across continents. But in the 20th century, a new kind of story began to form. One grounded not in legend, but in stone and bone. Picture an early morning in eastern Africa. The sun rises over wide plains. A small team of archaeologists moves slowly across a dig site. Brushes sweep dust from fragments half buried in sediment. The work is not dramatic. It is meticulous. It is repetitive. Days pass with little change. Then, gently, the shape of a skull emerges. Not entirely modern, not entirely ancient, something in between. One of the earliest known fossils attributed to anatomically modern humans was found in Africa, dated to hundreds of thousands of years ago. The exact numbers matter less here than the pattern. Again and again, the oldest remains of Homo sapiens appear in African soil. Morocco, Ethiopia, South Africa, sites separated by distance, yet connected by age. In this 64 gentle sleep stories history, we imagine each fossil as a quiet fragment placed upon a vast wooden table. The table represents our understanding of human origins. For decades, pieces from Africa accumulate at its center. They do not shout, they simply fit. Researchers fly across continents. They carry crates of carefully wrapped bone fragments. They compare shapes of brow ridges, jaw lines, cranial capacity. They debate softly in conference rooms. They publish papers filled with cautious language. Yet beneath the caution, a pattern strengthens. The earliest widely accepted evidence of fully modern human anatomy keeps leading back to Africa. And all of this aligns with the cognitive transformation we traced earlier. Minds forged in Africa, bodies shaped there too. These discoveries did not appear all at once. They emerged across decades. A skull here, a jawbone there, a partial skeleton from sediment layers older than previously imagined. Each discovery is modest. Each one adds weight. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, we slow down and visualize the process. Scientists waiting under canvas tents as wind moves across the savanna, carefully labeling fragments, holding them against the light. No triumphant music, just careful observation. The narrative begins to consolidate. If the oldest clearly modern human fossils are consistently African, then perhaps the origin story is simpler than once believed. Perhaps the cognitive revolution, the layered pressures, the environmental laboratory, all converged on one continent. Recent discoveries about the out-of-Africa theory did not overturn decades of evidence. They refined it. They strengthened it. And as we rest within this quiet accumulation of data, the refrain returns softly. Each fossil uncovered, each layer brushed clean, seems to whisper, "Return to Africa."
As the fossil fragments rest quietly on our imagined table, another kind of evidence begins to glow, not in bone, but in blood. In laboratories far from the African savanna, under fluorescent light rather than starlight, researchers peer into something far more delicate than stone. They study strands of DNA. And in this calm continuation of recent discoveries about the out-of-Africa theory, the whisper grows slightly clearer. The fossil record told one part of the story. Genetics began to tell another. During the late 20th century, scientists developed methods to compare genetic variation across populations around the world. What they found was not dramatic in tone, but profound in implication. Human genetic diversity is highest among populations in Africa. The further one travels geographically from Africa, the narrower the range of variation tends to become. In this 64 gentle sleep story history, we imagine genetic diversity as colors in a woven fabric. In Africa, the tapestry holds the richest range of shades. Outside Africa, the patterns remain beautiful, but slightly less varied. This pattern fits elegantly with a simple model. If a population originates in one place and then small groups migrate outward over time, those migrating groups carry with them only a portion of the original diversity. As they settle in new lands, their genetic variation reflects a subset of the whole. The greatest reservoir remains where the lineage began. DNA evidence for African origins does not shout its conclusions. It emerges from careful comparison of mitochondrial DNA, Y chromosome markers, and entire genomes sequenced base by base. The details are complex, but the overall signal is consistent. When scientists trace maternal lineages backward in time, the branches converge most deeply within Africa. When paternal lineages are mapped, similar convergence appears there as well. The story does not require Latin terminology or dense charts. It requires patience. Picture a quiet lab where sequences of letters A, T, C, G line computer screens. Each letter represents a small chemical component of life. Researchers compare these sequences across individuals from different continents. They do not look for spectacle, they look for pattern. And gradually, the pattern strengthens. The deepest roots of our shared genetic tree extend into Africa. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, we allow the image to soften. A scientist leans back in a chair, reviewing data late at night. The numbers do not announce themselves with drama. They align, they repeat, they converge. Each dataset becomes another small puzzle piece placed gently on the table beside the fossils. Bone says Africa. DNA says Africa. The cognitive and environmental pressures we have traced align seamlessly with these findings. Minds forged there, bodies diversified there, lineages branching outward from there. Recent discoveries about the out-of-Africa theory did not eliminate debate entirely. Science rarely does, but the accumulation of fossil evidence and DNA evidence for African origins forms a coherent picture. It is not built on one dramatic discovery, it is built on hundreds of careful studies. In each study, like a quiet voice in a large hall, repeats the same phrase: return to Africa. Now, as fossils rest on one side of our imagined table and DNA data glows softly on the other, we allow ourselves a slow breath. The final piece is not a single discovery, it is the quiet alignment of many discoveries. In this gentle continuation of recent discoveries about the out-of-Africa theory, we do not look for drama, we look for coherence. For much of modern history, scholars debated whether humans might have evolved in multiple regions simultaneously. It was an understandable question. After all, human beings inhabit every continent. But over the past century, as excavations deepened and genetic sequencing refined, the pieces began to settle into a clearer arrangement. The oldest widely accepted fossils of anatomically modern humans remain in Africa. The greatest genetic diversity remains in Africa. The branching patterns of maternal and paternal lineages converge most deeply in Africa. The environmental pressures we traced, volatile climate cycles, fragmented geography, dense predator ecosystems, were layered most intensely in Africa. And slowly, gently, the table fills. In this 64 gentle sleep stories history, imagine an archaeologist standing at sunset beside a dig site. The wind moves softly across the ground. In their hands is not certainty, but pattern recognition. They have studied fragments for decades. They have traveled between conferences, laboratories, and field camps. They have compared skull shapes and DNA sequences. And over time, the direction of evidence becomes difficult to ignore. It does not demand applause, it invites acceptance. Recent discoveries about the out-of-Africa theory are not about proving one continent superior, they are about understanding origin. Africa is not a footnote in the human story, it is the opening chapter. And the final piece of the puzzle is simply this: every line of inquiry, fossil, genetic, environmental, converges on the same geographic source. When scientists map ancient migration routes outward from Africa into Eurasia and beyond, the timeline aligns with genetic bottlenecks observed in global populations. When they compare cranial morphology across early human remains, the continuum traces backward into African forms. When they model population sizes across time, the deepest and most stable reservoirs remain within Africa. None of these elements alone would be decisive, but together they form a coherent narrative. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, we imagine placing the last quiet fragment onto the wooden table. Not a triumphant slam, but a gentle placement. The edges fit, the image becomes clearer. Humans evolved in Africa, not because of myth, not because of preference, but because the combined weight of evidence points there. The cognitive revolution unfolded there. The environmental laboratory shaped us there. The genetic roots anchor there. And from there, small groups began to move outward, carrying with them a fraction of the diversity and memory of their homeland. If you are listening in Europe, Asia, the Americas, Australia, your lineage, when traced far enough, bends back toward Africa. In this moment of stillness, that realization can feel grounding rather than dramatic. It reminds us that our shared story is older than borders, older than languages, older than nations. The final piece of the puzzle is not a sensational revelation. It is a quiet convergence. Fossils whisper, DNA repeats, climate patterns echo, and the refrain we have heard throughout this chapter returns one last time, softer than before, almost like a lullaby. Return to Africa. Now, let us gently rotate the globe. Let Africa drift out of the center for a moment. Let your mind travel eastward across the Red Sea, northward toward Europe, westward across vast oceans. And as we look softly at Asia, Europe, the Americas, we ask without judgment and without urgency, why not here? Why humans evolved only in Africa, not elsewhere, is not a question of superiority. It is a question of combination, a question of timing, a question of pressure layered upon pressure. In this gentle comparative anthropology for sleep, we begin with Asia. Imagine the dense tropical rainforests of Southeast Asia, thick canopy overhead, humidity rising from the forest floor, life abundant, stable, green. For long stretches of time, these environments offered consistency. Water flowed predictably. Vegetation returned season after season. In such stability, adaptation still occurs, but the kind of relentless, cyclical environmental volatility that characterized much of Africa was less constant in certain regions. In other parts of Asia, vast mountain ranges like the Himalayas created dramatic altitudes and climatic divisions. Yet many of these zones were either too extreme for early hominin populations or too segmented for continuous continent-wide evolutionary experimentation. Europe offers a different image. Picture long Ice Age winters, expanses of tundra, glaciers advancing and retreating. These environments imposed intense pressures, but often in abrupt and catastrophic waves. Entire regions became uninhabitable under thick ice sheets. Populations contracted sharply. Survival required resilience, yes, but the repeated deep freezes limited continuous population growth and interaction over extended periods. In contrast, Africa's climatic shifts were often severe yet oscillatory. Wet to dry, grassland to woodland,
lake to desert and back again. But rarely did the entire continent become uniformly uninhabitable. There were refuges, corridors, spaces where isolated groups could survive, adapt, and later reconnect. In this gentle history documentary to fall asleep to, imagine Africa as a vast breathing organism, expanding and contracting in ecological diversity, while other continents experienced either relative stability or overwhelming disruption. The Americas, too, present a different evolutionary stage. For much of human prehistory, they remained uninhabited by hominins. Geographic isolation across oceans prevented early experimentation altogether. Only much later did human groups arrive, carrying with them the cognitive and biological toolkit already forged elsewhere. Australia followed a similar pattern: remote, isolated, entered by humans only after modern cognition had fully matured. And so, as we drift gently across the map, the comparison remains soft. No continent is lesser. Each holds its own ecological grandeur. Each shaped human societies profoundly once humans arrived. But the specific combo of conditions required to produce Homo sapiens, volatile yet survivable climate cycles, fragmented yet reconnecting geography, dense predator ecosystems, and long uninterrupted evolutionary continuity aligned most completely in Africa. Why humans evolved only in Africa, not elsewhere, begins to feel less mysterious and more structural. It is not about destiny, it is about convergence. And as we let the globe rotate slowly in our imagination, returning Africa gently to the center, we begin to see that its uniqueness lay not in any single factor, but in how all factors intertwined across immense spans of time.
Let the globe continue its slow, unhurried turn. We have glanced at Asia and Europe, at the Americas and Australia, and now we lean a little deeper into comparison, still without judgment, still without haste. In this gentle comparative anthropology for sleep, we are not asking which continent was stronger or harsher. We are asking which landscape offered the rare balance of instability and continuity that allowed the long experiment of human evolution to unfold without permanent interruption. Consider again the rhythm of African climate cycles. Wet phases expanded lakes and rivers. Dry phases reduced them. Grasslands spread, then retreated. Woodlands appeared, then thinned. When the climate changed, behavior had to change. And when behavior changed, the brain slowly adapted. And this repeated over tens of thousands of years. Now imagine parts of Europe during extended glacial maxima. Ice sheets advanced across vast territories. Entire ecological zones vanished beneath frozen layers. Populations were forced into limited southern refuges or disappeared altogether. Evolution under such abrupt contraction is intense but discontinuous. It narrows rather than diversifies. It compresses rather than circulates. Africa, by contrast, shifted in mosaics. When one region dried, another might remain fertile. When lakes receded in one basin, wetlands formed elsewhere. Groups separated by desert corridors could survive independently, then reconnect when climate softened. This pattern of separation and reunion was essential. It allowed variation to emerge in isolation, then spread through contact. In Asia, immense river systems such as the Yangtze and the Ganges nurtured stable agricultural civilizations much later, but during earlier hominin times, many regions were either densely forested or geographically compartmentalized by mountains. Stability supports survival, but it does not always demand radical cognitive flexibility. And so the question why humans evolved only in Africa, not elsewhere,
becomes clearer when viewed as a matter of evolutionary tempo. Africa's tempo was variable but sustained. Europe's tempo was sometimes abrupt and suppressive. The Americas' tempo began too late for early hominin diversification. Australia remained isolated until modern cognition was already fully formed. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, imagine walking across each continent in slow sequence. In Europe, cold winds sweep across open plains. In northern Asia, icy air settles over vast tundra. In the Amazon basin, thick humidity muffles sound beneath layers of foliage. And in Africa, you move from savanna to woodland, from river valley to arid expanse, within distances that early humans could traverse across generations. The diversity lies not only in geography, but in accessibility. Africa allowed movement, movement allowed encounter, encounter allowed exchange, exchange allowed selection of successful adaptations. And this circulation, environmental, genetic, behavioral, continued across immense spans of time. It is this continuity that matters most, for evolution requires both pressure and persistence. Too little pressure and change is slow. Too much catastrophic pressure and lineages vanish. Africa offered a middle path, a pressure cooker, yes, but one that rarely sealed shut completely. In this slow reflection, we feel the structural logic forming. Not superiority, not destiny, simply convergence of conditions that nowhere else assembled in the same prolonged way. And as the globe continues to rotate gently in our imagination, the answer becomes quieter, not louder. Homo sapiens required variability without total collapse, isolation without permanent fragmentation, danger without extinction, and this delicate balance found its longest home in Africa.
And now, as the globe completes its slow and silent rotation, we allow Africa to return once more to the center of our imagination, not as a symbol of pride, not as a claim of exception, but as a quiet convergence point. In this final reflection of our gentle comparative anthropology for sleep, we gather all the threads without tightening them. We have wandered across rainforests and tundras, glaciers and river valleys. We have seen that every continent carries beauty, danger, stability, and disruption in its own way. Yet evolution is not shaped by beauty alone, nor by hardship alone. It is shaped by the sustained interaction between change and survival. Africa's uniqueness lay in duration. Millions of years of uninterrupted hominin presence. Millions of years in which populations were pressured, separated, reunited, pressured again. The laboratory was vast. The timeline was long. The environmental cooker pressure was intense, but rarely total. When climates cooled or dried, not all corridors closed. When ecosystems shifted, not all refuges vanished. The experiment continued. Why humans evolved only in Africa, not elsewhere, becomes less a question of location and more a question of continuity. Europe experienced dramatic cold cycles that erased entire regions from habitation. Asia presented immense landscapes, but often in compartments that limited long-term mixing of early hominin groups. The Americas and Australia entered the human story only after cognitive and biological modernity were already in motion. Africa alone combined early presence, long persistence, ecological diversity, and rhythmic climatic fluctuation in a way that allowed evolutionary pressures to accumulate rather than reset. In this calm history documentary to fall asleep to, imagine standing once more on the African savanna at twilight.
The sky deepens from gold to violet. A small group of early humans moves toward a familiar shelter. They carry tools shaped by generations before them. They carry language refined over countless evenings. They carry memory of droughts, of migrations, of predator encounters, of reunions with distant kin. None of this is spectacular, it is cumulative. And that accumulation is what matters. Homo sapiens did not emerge from a single dramatic moment. We emerged from layers of adaptation, building upon layers of adaptation. The balance of danger and refuge, the balance of isolation and exchange, the balance of stability and volatility. This combination, sustained over immense time, forged minds capable of imagination and bodies capable of endurance. And all of this unfolded in Africa. Not because other continents lacked complexity, not because evolution could not occur elsewhere, but because nowhere else did the same combo of pressures persist long enough, widely enough, and flexibly enough to generate our particular form of consciousness. In this gentle closing of the comparison, we allow the idea to settle rather than conclude abruptly. The globe does not stop spinning. Continents continue to shift. Climate continues to change. But the origin of our species remains anchored in one vast ancient landscape. And as we prepare to move toward the final conclusion of our journey, we hold this thought softly. Africa was not simply the first stage of human history. It was the crucible where continuity met variability, where separation met reunion, where pressure met persistence. And from that meeting point, Homo sapiens stepped into the wider world.
When you close your eyes tonight, whether you are in New York, Tokyo, Paris, Nairobi, Sao Paulo, or in a quiet room somewhere far from any city lights, within every small cell of your body, you still carry something very ancient, something that began in Africa. And as we reach the final chapter of this long history to fall asleep to about where we began, we let the rhythms slow even further. No more comparisons, no more maps turning, just a gentle gathering of everything we have explored. We traced climate first, the oscillation between wet and dry, lakes swelling, then shrinking, grasslands stretching, then thinning. When climate changed, behavior changed, and when behavior changed, the mind adapted. Over thousands upon thousands of years, African climate and human evolution became intertwined in a slow conversation. We traced geography next, valleys dividing groups, mountains separating communities, deserts opening corridors, then closing them. Groups moved apart, evolved in partial isolation, then met again and mixed. Variation emerged, exchange followed. The natural laboratory of Africa continued its quiet experiment without collapsing entirely. We traced predators and prey, the golden eyes in the tall grass, the awareness that survival required cooperation. We saw how weakness in tooth and claw became strength in language and memory. How early humans, surrounded by powerful animals, learned to rely not on physical dominance, but on imagination and coordination. We traced the cognitive revolution in Africa, the moment when humans did not only react, but planned, did not only remember, but imagined, did not only survive the present, but prepared for futures unseen. And then we listened to the recent discoveries about the out-of-Africa theory, fossils resting in sediment layers older than expected,
DNA evidence for African origins quietly aligning across global populations. The pattern converging not loudly but consistently. Each line of inquiry, environmental, anatomical, genetic, pointing toward the same origin story of our species. In this calm reminder of our common human history, the conclusion does not arrive as a revelation, it arrives as recognition. Recognition that no matter how different our languages sound, no matter how varied our cultures appear, the roots extend back to one continent. Our shared African heritage is not a political statement, it is a biological memory. It is written in the diversity of genes that remain richest there. It is written in the fossil record that stretches deeper there. It is written in the climate cycles that sculpted cognition there. And as you listen, perhaps already feeling your thoughts softened at the edges, you may sense that this story dissolves distance. It dissolves the idea that we began somewhere separate from them. Because there is no them in deep time. There was only one evolving lineage, one expanding family, one long migration outward from a common cradle. And that cradle was Africa.
And now, we let everything grow even quieter. The maps fade, the timelines soften, the fossils rest. The DNA sequences dim into background light. What remains is something simpler than data and older than debate, our shared African heritage. In this final stretch of our long history to fall asleep to about where we began, there is nothing left to prove, only something to remember. Imagine, just for a moment, tracing your lineage backward, back past your parents, back past their parents, back through centuries of names you may never know, back through languages that changed shape, back through villages and empires that rose and fell. Continue traveling backward, beyond recorded history, beyond written symbols, beyond agriculture and cities. Continue until clothing was simple and tools were stone. Continue until memory itself was carried only in voice and gesture. If you travel far enough, you arrive in Africa. Not at a specific village, not at a specific tribe, but at a vast, ancient landscape where early humans once watched the same stars you see tonight. In this calm reminder of our common human history, the realization is gentle. There is no sharp border between us and them in deep time. Every boundary is recent. Every division is new. The deeper we go, the fewer lines remain. We share not only ancestry but experience, the fear of drought, the hope of rain, the warmth of firelight, the tension of night sounds beyond the camp, the relief of reunion when separated kin met again. These emotions traveled outward with migrating groups. They crossed deserts and mountains. They crossed narrow land bridges and followed coastlines. They became stories in different tongues. They became rituals, songs, myths. But their origin traces back to one cradle. Our shared African heritage is written not only in genes, but in memory patterns that echo through culture. Cooperation, curiosity, storytelling, planning for tomorrow. These are not inventions of one region. They are inheritances from deep African time. And as the centuries unfolded, as humans settled across continents, adapted to cold, heat, altitude, forest, and island, the underlying structure remained the same. One species, one origin story of our species. In this gentle anthropology for sleep, the final message does not ask you to feel awe, it asks you to feel connection.
You are not separate from that ancient landscape. You are an extension of it. The cities around you are new. The technologies in your hand are recent. But the mind that uses them carries rhythms shaped under African skies. And so we close with a repetition, soft and steady, like the last flicker of fire before sleep. We all come from the same place. We all carry the same story. And tonight you can rest, knowing that beneath every difference, beneath every language and border, there is one shared beginning. Let the thoughts settle. Let it become slower. We all come from the same place. We all carry the same story. And tonight, you may drift into sleep, held gently by the distant whisper of history.